Hello, this is James Harvey, the professor of music theory at the College of Southern Nevada with 5-minute music theory. We'll start that timer and we're going to talk about some new interval qualities here. So first, let's cover the two that we already covered really quickly, major and minor. Major is abbreviated with an uppercase M, and the way I abbreviate minor is with a lowercase m, and I had the little line on top of it too, just to make sure that I know that I'm looking at minor. Now, what I'm going to put in between these two is an uppercase P, which is going to stand for perfect. Now, perfect intervals are much different than major and minor intervals. Really quickly, why they're called perfect has to do with the sound waves created by the two notes and how they interact with each other. They interact in a much more perfect way than major and minor, where the notes are sort of crashing into each other. So that's why they're called perfect. Now, not all intervals can be considered perfect, just as actually not all intervals can be considered major and minor as well. Before we get into which ones can be which, let's cover the other qualities first. We have an uppercase A, which stands for augmented. And then we have a lowercase d, which stands for diminished. There actually are more qualities than these, but I'm not going to cover them in these videos because we almost never ever see them. So these are the 5 qualities that we really need to know. Now we need to know the classifications of these. And in order to do this, I'm going to put a little chart on the screen. But before I erase this, let's talk about these terms, augmented and diminished, and just think about what they mean outside of a musical context. That augmented means made larger and diminished means made smaller. And then remember that major and minor also have those similar definitions as well, that major means big and minor means small. And then let's go ahead and erase here. I'm going to have to probably do another pass here to get rid of those little extra thingies. And then let's do a chart. There are the perfect intervals and the imperfect intervals. Perfect, imperfect. Now, imperfect just means not perfect here. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. And then we're only going to deal with sizes here. So I'm going to put a little line down the middle and we'll talk about which ones are which. There actually is an interval that has a size of 1, and it's called a unison. And that's when the two notes are occupying the same space on the staff. And the unison is a perfect interval, or could be considered perfect. So the ones that are perfect can either be perfect, augmented, or diminished. Those are the 3 qualities of perfect intervals. Typically they're perfect, and then if it's larger than perfect, it's augmented, smaller is diminished. Seconds and thirds are both imperfect intervals, major and minor. Now the qualities that can be used for imperfect intervals are major, minor, and actually augmented and diminished. Both are possible here as well. Any intervals can be augmented or diminished. That's sort of an extreme when you go that far. So let's continue now. Fourths and fifths are really the heart of the perfect interval territory. There's no such thing as a major fourth or a major fifth. They can only be augmented, perfect, or diminished. And same goes for like seconds and thirds, that there's no such thing as a perfect second or a perfect third. And then sixths and sevenths belong over here on the right side. And we only have one more interval size here, which is the octave, which is an eighth, like that. And those are all of our simple intervals, all the ones that are all within 1 octave. We'll cover bigger intervals later. So perfect and imperfect. Notice that there's 4 of each. This might take a little while to get used to, but it's really important that you know which category your interval size belongs to, because in the next few videos, I'm going to give you some little tips and tricks on how to calculate some intervals in a quicker way so you're not counting so many half steps. And really the first step to doing some of those is to determine whether or not you're looking at a perfect or an imperfect interval. And again, the perfect intervals are the ones that could potentially be perfect. Unisons, that's the one there. This is called a unison. Unisons, fourths, fifths, and then octaves are all perfect intervals, or could potentially be perfect. And then all the remaining intervals, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, are the imperfect or the major minor intervals, however you want to refer to them. So it's really important that we do understand the differences of these classifications of interval sizes before we get farther into interval size, interval quality, and calculating interval quality. So really this concept is pretty simple. It's just there's a little bit of memorization involved in remembering which one is which, so you don't make that horrible mistake of calling something a major fourth or a major fifth. You'll drive your music theory professor crazy. Trust me, I know it. That's it. We made it just in time. Thank you.